Morning sky was a somber grey, casting a muted light over the fields where George Ramirez toiled. The air was thick with the scent of damp soil, comforting yet heavy, echoing the weight of memories he wished to escape. As he bent down to work, the rhythmic sound of his hands digging into the earth was interrupted by a faint scratching noise drifting from the barn next door. Curiosity sparked within him. He placed his tools aside and took a steadying breath, walking toward the old structure owned by his reclusive neighbor, Norma Parks. The barn loomed large against the sky, its weathered wooden boards hiding secrets whispered between the cracks. Despite the town's tales of Norma being a keeper of mysteries, George had always felt an unexplainable draw to her, an urge to understand the shadowy figure that held the key to pieces of his family's history. As he approached, the atmospheric tension thickened, and he noticed the door slightly ajar. Pushing it open, the hinges creaked, revealing a dark interior filled with the scent of hay and dust. George's flashlight flickered to life, illuminating the dim space. Shadows danced around him, but his gaze fell on something buried beneath a mound of straw, an ancient artifact covered in intricate symbols that sparked his intrigue and dread in equal measure. Suddenly Norma appeared like a phantom, her presence charged with energy as she stepped into the beam of light. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice edged with a protective fierceness. Caught off guard, George stumbled over his words. "I heard something. I came to see—" His voice trailed off as he shifted uncomfortably under her penetrating gaze. "Some things are better left buried," she warned, though her tone flashed with an unexpected vulnerability. The shadows tight around them seemed to thicken, amplifying the intensity of the moment. "Why? What does it mean?" George pressed, an urgent need for answers swelling within him. He felt the artifact's pull deep inside, a beckoning that stirred long-dormant questions about his family's past and the heavy silence surrounding it. Norma glanced down, her fierce demeanor fading momentarily as she battled her own internal struggle. "You don't understand what you're getting into," she murmured, hesitation lacing her words. George felt the weight of her warning sink into him, but the echoes of the artifact's history ignited a flame of determination. He turned away, stepping back out into the open air. The moment felt like a turning point amid a fog of uncertainty, and he knew this confrontation was only the beginning. Walking back to his fields, the oppressive silence of the barn hung heavy on his mind. The sound of the earth squelching beneath his boots echoed the emptiness stirring in his chest. Questions swirled like leaves in the wind. What secrets lay hidden in the past? What truths had shaped his family's legacy, clouded by grief and silence? His gaze drifted towards the barn one last time. The weight of unspoken history pressed down like the clouds above, but it was also an invitation, a call toward discovery and confrontation. George felt the pull of fate guiding him forward, heralding a journey that would challenge everything he knew about loyalty, family, and forgiveness. Little did he realize, the shadows gripping his past were ready to unravel, revealing the tangled roots of his life. Days trickled into each other as George grappled with the shadows of his past. The barn lingered in his thoughts, a silent specter, urging him to confront the secrets buried within. Each evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky, he found himself sitting on his porch, the warm wooden planks creaking beneath him. The air was filled with the earthy scent of tilled soil, reminiscent of family gatherings long past, gatherings that were now marred by loss and unspoken words. His memories danced like fireflies in the dusk, vibrant scenes of laughter and joy intermingled with moments of silence as heavy as the Texas sky. He recalled the sound of his brother Javier, strumming a guitar, their voices echoing as they sang under the wide expanse of stars. But with Javier's abrupt departure, laughter faded, replaced by a stifling quiet that suffocated the warmth that once filled their home. That summer barbecue replayed in his mind, vivid yet painful. The aroma of grilled meat mingled with wildflowers, but it was punctuated by the palpable tension between siblings and parents. Clara's sharp voice rose above the hum, laced with bitterness as she questioned why their world had crumbled. "What did he do to deserve this?" she had murmured, eyes downcast, as worry leaked into the gathering atmosphere. George had been too young, innocent at the time, to grasp the depth of their family's divide, the rift that had formed not only in their hearts, but within their very identities. Lost in his reverie, George was jolted back to the moment by the sound of footsteps approaching. Eli Johnson, his childhood friend, emerged from the shadows with his guitar slung casually over his shoulder. "You look like you've seen a ghost," he said lightly, taking a seat beside George. "Just thinking about the past," George admitted, forcing a smile. "It's hard to move forward without knowing what happened back then." "Talking might help," Eli suggested, plucking the strings of his guitar gently. "You need to have those conversations. Ignoring it won't heal anything." George nodded, the weight of Eli's words resonating within him. Perhaps confronting Clara was the way to unravel the mess of silence and hurt that lingered like a cloud between them. That night, he drove to Clara's house, his grip tightening on the steering wheel with each mile he traveled. Memories washed over him like waves, mingling joy and sorrow as he navigated the familiar dirt roads that once marked territory for childhood games. They were now haunted by the remnants of a brother's absence and the choice to remain distanced from his sister. When he arrived, the tension was palpable as he knocked on the door. Clara opened it, surprise flickering across her expression. "George," she said, suspicion and caution etched into her features. "Can we talk?" he asked, feeling the weight of their shared past pressing down upon him. "Talk about what?" "The past that still haunts us," she replied, arms crossed defiantly. "Yes, about Javier, about everything," he admitted, stepping inside her home and feeling the familiar yet foreign atmosphere of their shared childhood. The air between them thickened with unresolved emotions. "You think it's that simple?" Clara challenged, her voice tinged with hurt. "You think you can just walk back in and fix this?" "I need to understand," George urged, feelings boiling to the surface. "For years, we've been stuck in this silence. Javier was our brother. We can't keep avoiding what happened." The room fell silent, the walls echoing with all that had been left unsaid. Clara's defenses began to crack, revealing the pain she held tightly. "Every day, I see the emptiness he left. It's not just a chapter that ends. It feels like the whole book was ripped apart." Her words pierced George's heart. "I know it hurts. I've felt it too," he said gently. "But if we don't talk, we'll never heal. We have to face the truth together." After a long pause, Clara finally exhaled, letting the tension seep from her shoulders. "You really want to do this?" she asked, her voice softer, vulnerable. "We have to try," George replied, determination filling the air around him. As the evening wore on, they sat across from each other, memories surfacing like a tide. Stories of Javier, echoes of laughter intertwined with tears, flooded through them, each moment rich with history and emotion. The past was a bittersweet melody setting the stage for their future, and with every word exchanged, the healing began. With the night deepening around them, a fragile connection began to form, one infused with the silent understanding that facing the past hand in hand could recreate the warmth that had once filled their lives. Deep within, George felt the flicker of hope battling against the shadows, urging him forward into the uncharted territory of forgiveness, family, and love. The following weeks unfurled like a slow dawn, each day tinted with the hues of newfound dialogue. George and Clara took tentative steps towards mending their fractured bond, but the journey was far from easy. Every conversation bore its weight, exposing raw wounds that had festered in silence for too long. George found solace in the mornings, rising early to walk the fields and let the cool, crisp air wash over him. The rustling of the crops sang a gentle song, but even nature's rhythms couldn't drown out the lingering echoes of their past. Javier's absence reverberated in his heart, a persistent ache that lingered like a haunting refrain. One particular afternoon, as George finished his chores, he spotted Clara walking down the dirt road toward the house, her expression shadowed and pensive. Concern filled him as he watched her approach. The closer she got, the more he noticed the tightness in her shoulders and the distancing gaze in her eyes. "Clara, what's wrong?" he asked, emotions bubbling at the surface. "You look troubled." I'm overwhelmed," she confessed, her voice trembling softly. "I thought the more we talked about Javier, the easier it would get. But it's like every conversation opens new wounds I didn't know were there." "It hurts," George said, his heart aching with empathy. "But we're facing it now. It's part of healing." He reached out to touch her hand, trying to bridge the gap between their shared pain. She pulled back slightly, eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I just don't know if I can handle it all. Some days I feel as if I'm drowning in memories and I can barely breathe." "I get it," he replied, pain pooling within him too. "But we're in this together. It doesn't have to be faced all at once. We can take it one day at a time." As they stood there under the wide expanse of the Texas sky, Clara nodded slowly, though the tension never fully left her expression. Their shared commitment to facing the past felt daunting against the backdrop of their loss. The days turned into weeks, their conversations continuing in earnest. Yet with each revelation, George felt more isolated. The weight of Javier's absence loomed heavy, and the closer they came to the truth, the further back old resentments pushed him. One evening, after a particularly painful exchange about the night Javier disappeared, George found himself sitting alone on the porch. Beneath the stars, he strummed his guitar softly, letting the melancholic notes blend with the night air. It was his only refuge now. Music was a language that never judged, a balm for his aching heart. But with the strumming, a new realization drifted in. During their talks, Clara and George had unearthed old hurts, but neither had truly confronted how they felt about one another, the ties that had nearly severed under the weight of grief and loss. He wished to express thoughts that lay tangled in his heart, words of love and gratitude. Yet fear tethered him, haunting him with the thought of pushing her away further. Just then, he heard footsteps approaching. Clara sat down beside him, her presence filling the void with warmth. "I heard you playing," she said softly, settling in close. He smiled faintly and continued to play, the music a gentle backdrop to their growing bond. "Music always helps me think," he replied. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too," she said, her voice barely a whisper as the silence enveloped them both. Splitting the stillness, Clara broke the boundary that had shielded her heart. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if Javier were here?" "Every day," he replied honestly. "He was our connection, the heart of this family. His absence is a constant reminder of what we lost." Clara nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I keep thinking about how we let fear and anger take control. Sometimes I feel so alone in this," she admitted. "No one should have to bear it alone," George said, turning to face her, vulnerable. "You're my sister. We're in this together, and I want to fight for us." Her eyes met his, a myriad of emotions reflected within them, surprise and uncertainty dancing along with longing. "I want that too," she confessed, but shadows still lurked behind her words. "I'm scared, George," she continued. "What if we can't heal what's broken? What if this is too much for us?" "Then we keep holding on," he assured her, his grip tightening on the guitar. "One step forward, even if it's a small one. We have to believe that together we can find a way through this." Clara's gaze softened with the flicker of hope. "I'd like that, I need that." As the stars twinkled above, George felt a mix of determination and fear wash over him. Their bond was fragile, built on shared sorrow and a yearning to reconnect. But where there had once been anguish, he now felt the stirrings of possibility swimming through the night air, fragile, yet resolute. In that moment of vulnerability, as the echoes of music entwined with their unspoken truths, George sensed that the path ahead was not only paved with pain and loneliness, but also echoed with the promise of healing. Together, they would build a bridge of understanding, using their shared memories as building blocks towards something more profound, a renewed love that transcended loss. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, George and Clara ventured deeper into their healing journey. The weight of their shared past began to lift as they leaned on one another, cautiously rediscovering the love that once wove their paths tight. The mornings found them walking the fields together, each step a soft reminder of the grounding beauty surrounding them. George marveled at the audacity of nature. The sun kissed the horizon, and wildflowers burst into bloom, roses among the thorns symbolizing hope and renewal despite the barren patches they had traversed. On these walks, they exchanged stories, laughter merging with memories both joyful and painful. One morning, Clara broached the tender topic of music. "You know, Javier used to say that music was like breathing to him," she shared, her voice warm yet wistful. "He believed it could heal wounds." George felt an ache as he recalled his brother's passion. Javier had always been the beacon of creativity in their family. After his disappearance, George had stopped playing in earnest, feeling as if every note would echo loss rather than joy. "I think we should play together," Clara suggested hesitantly, her eyes shimmering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "For Javier." Her words hung in the air, stirring both fear and longing in George's heart. "You mean it?" he asked, a hopeful glint emerging in his eyes. "Yes, "I think it's time we honor him instead of letting silence bind us," she replied, her expression steadying him. With that, they ventured into the barn, a space that now felt less like a mausoleum of memories and more like an invitation to create anew. The interior was dust-laden, but still retained a warmth that wrapped around them as they stepped inside. Cobwebs hung like old curtain ties, but the scent of fresh hay mingled with the familiar musk of wood, awakening nostalgia. As they rummaged through forgotten boxes filled with old instruments, Clara unearthed a rusty banjo with a story etched in its strings. The moment George laid eyes on it, memories of their childhood flooded back, evenings spent in laughter and harmony, when everything felt possible. "Here," Clara said, her hands brushing over the banjo's body. "Let's make music again." He nodded, taking a deep breath as he retrieved his guitar, its wooden frame warm with familiarity. Together they sat on a rough-hewn wooden crate, instruments resting against their knees, hearts yearning to echo the music of their youth. As George strummed the first chord, Clara's fingers danced tentatively over the banjo, searching for a note. They began to play, a simple melody that spilled forth like sunlight cutting through clouds. The sound enveloped them, washing over the shadows clinging to the past, transforming pain into something beautiful. Through their music, George began to find what he had lost. Laughter rang out. Their voices rose in sync, each note breaking down barriers that had stood too long. Time drifted, the outside world fading as the two siblings lost themselves in the rapture of creation, connecting through the rhythm and vibration of the moment. After a while, they paused, breathless but invigorated. Clara's cheeks flushed with a sense of accomplishment. "That felt incredible," she exclaimed. Her spirit brightened. As the sun dipped towards the horizon, casting golden hues across the barn, George felt something shift within him, a burgeoning sense of renewal grounded in their shared experience. "I needed this," he admitted. "It's been too long since I've played." "Me too," Clara admitted, her gaze steady. "I've missed it. I've missed us." For the first time in a long while, George felt hope begin to unfurl inside him, emerging from the depths like a wildflower pushing through concrete. Reconnecting with Clara, with music, felt like rediscovering a part of himself he thought was lost forever. They continued to play, creating melodies born from shared laughter and tears, each strum deeper than the last. Javier's memory lingered in the air like a warm embrace, wrapping around them and igniting the spirit of camaraderie that had faded over the years. In the evenings that followed, they scheduled regular jam sessions. The barn became a sanctuary for their evolving bond, a place where vulnerability met strength through the strumming of strings. At each gathering, they honored their brother by playing his favorite songs, revisiting the essence of who he had been and the love he had ignited within them. Yet, amid the burgeoning harmony, there were moments when loneliness threatened to seep back in, creeping like shadows as they faced Javier's absence. One night, after an emotionally charged session, Clara looked at George, sadness clouding her eyes. "Why did it have to happen?" she asked, her voice trembling with sorrow. "Why did we lose him?" George felt the familiar weight of grief pack into his chest. "I wish I knew. I wish we could change it," he whispered, grasping for words. "But we can choose how to live now. We can carry his spirit forward." Tears glistened in Clara's eyes, but with each new note they played, they had found a way to express that sorrow. And so George tried to embrace the beauty amidst grief. Strands of melodies stitched them together, creating a tapestry of hope from the fabric of their loss. As weeks melted into months, springs turned into summers, and George marveled at the transformation of their lives. What had once felt like peering into an abyss shifted into a journey of resilience, both for him and Clara. Through music, they had unearthed the essence of their brother and unveiled the paths leading towards healing. Standing outside the barn one warm evening, with stars twinkling overhead, George leaned against a fence post, instrument in hand. Clara joined him, her laughter floating on the breeze. In that moment, both siblings recognized the dawn of something profound, a rebirth anchored in love, for everything shared and everything yet to come. Together, they would write new songs, telling stories of family and legacy, transforming pain into something more vibrant. No longer chained by fear, they looked towards a horizon where hope surged anew, and the music of their lives began to play in harmony once more, filling the air with promise, connection, and enduring love. Summer faded slowly into autumn, the air crisp with change as the landscape transitioned beneath a canopy of fiery leaves. George and Clara continued to nurture their bond through music, penning new songs and exploring the strength of their kinship. Yet beneath the warmth of their shared light, a shadow loomed. The unresolved tension surrounding Javier's disappearance remained an unresolved note in their melody. As the seasons shifted, George began to feel the pull of that lingering mystery more intensely. He found himself drawn back to the artifact, the object that had ignited their confrontation earlier in the year, a relic steeped in uncertainty and the weight of their family's history. It sat hidden in the barn, a symbol of questions unanswered and truths buried, ready to be unearthed if they dared to confront it. One brisk evening, while Clara was inside preparing dinner, George slipped out to the barn, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and curiosity. Shadows played tricks as he navigated the creaking shelves, finally uncovering the object cluttered beneath a stack of old hay bales. Dust danced in the golden rays, filtering through the barn's windows as he reached for it. The artifact felt heavier than he remembered, a tangible weight of history pressing against his resolve. Clutching it, George hesitated, thoughts racing. What if opening this chapter invited chaos back into their lives? They had found solace in music and memory. Did they really want to unravel that comfort? But another thought ignited hope within him. What if this search for truth could bring additional peace? With the artifact in hand, he headed back to the house, his heart quickening at the thought of confronting Clara. He found her in the kitchen, surrounded by the comforting aroma of dinner simmering on the stove. She turned at the sound of his footsteps, a questioning look crossing her face. "Everything okay?" Clara asked, a hint of concern glazing her voice. "I found it," he said, holding the artifact high, letting the fading light glimmer against its surface. "The relic from our past. We need to talk about it. Really talk about it." As she stepped closer, the expression in Clara's eyes shifted from confusion to wariness. "George, are you sure? What if it only opens wounds we don't want to revisit?" In silence, we've been retreating from the truth. Maybe we deserve to know what happened. "Javier deserves that. He deserves justice," George replied, determination lacing his words. Clara swallowed hard, her gaze darting to the object. "But what if the truth does more harm than good?" His heart thudded heavily as he searched her face for understanding. "We've been avoiding this for too long. It's been lingering in the back of our minds, and it's time we confronted it, together." With a sigh, Clara nodded slowly, her shoulders dropping slightly. "Okay, but I want to approach this carefully. Let's not rush into a storm we can't control." Together, they sat at the kitchen table, the artifact placed precariously between them. Tension buzzed in the air, weighted with anticipation and fear. George's fingers brushed over it, feeling the rough texture beneath his hands, as if the object were a portal to everything they had lost. "This belonged to Javier, didn't it?" Clara asked quietly, her voice a gentle tremor. "Yeah," George replied, trailing off as memories flooded back. He could almost hear Javier's laughter dancing around them. "I think it's what led to his disappearance." "What do you mean?" Clara asked, leaning closer. "Maybe it's connected to the accident. He was obsessed with its history, always searching for answers," George replied, uncertainty creeping into his voice. "I didn't understand it then, but now I feel compelled to uncover what he knew." As Clara listened, the shadows across her face deepened, concern etched into her features. "Are we ready for this? What if we uncover dark secrets? What if it spirals everything back into chaos?" A moment of silence hung between them, an invisible barrier that was tethered to their unresolved grief. George's heart pounded as he looked at Clara. Her fear mirrored his own. "Even if it's hard, we owe it to him and to ourselves to do this," he said firmly. "It's time we honor him in truth, not just in memory." Clara inhaled sharply, her resolve limping forward. "Okay, but let's take this slow. We need to be careful about what we uncover." With that agreement, they began their exploration. They carefully examined the artifact, noting the intricate engravings, the symbols that had once eluded them. The more they examined it, the clearer their connection to Javier became. They became detectives of their own past, piecing together loose threads that revealed the tapestry of their family's history. Days turned into weeks as these conversations turned deeper. Clara spoke of her sleepless nights, the memories of that day, the feelings she had buried for too long. George opened up about his regrets, the heavy weight of guilt for not being there for his brother, wishing he could have prevented the darkness from swallowing him whole. The further they ventured into Javier's past, the less distance there seemed to be between them. They faced the intimidating storm that danced on the fringes of their understanding, gathering strength with each new revelation. One evening, while poring through old photographs, Clara stumbled upon an image that sent a ripple of electricity through the air. A picture of Javier laughing and holding the artifact, surrounded by a group of friends. "Look," she exclaimed, pointing. "Those people. I've seen them before. They were with us in the neighborhood." George leaned in, eyes narrowing as he studied the faces in the photograph. An uncomfortable knot twisted in his stomach. "Who are they? Do you remember their names?" Clara shook her head slowly, struggling to unearth fading memories. "I think I only knew one of them, maybe the guy with the dark hair. He used to come around and hang out with Javier, but I don't remember much beyond that." "Maybe we should talk to them," George suggested, his voice steady but filled with anticipation. "They might know something more about what happened that day." Clara nodded, resolve rekindling in her eyes. "Let's do it. We need to take this step together." Little did they know that these conversations would lead them down a path towards confrontation, not only with the fragmented history of their brother, but also with the pain they had avoided for far too long. As they prepared for the journey ahead, George felt a flicker of something sacred taking root, a sense of purpose and belonging to something greater than themselves. They were stepping into a reality filled with questions and uncertainties, one that promised to test the very depths of their trust. Together they were ready to confront the darkness, believing that perhaps in unveiling the truth, they would also find a way to reclaim the light they had lost along the way. With new resolve, George and Clara set the wheels in motion for their journey into the past. They sought out the friends from the photograph, reconnecting with the memories that shadowed their lives. With Clara's home as their base, they scoured their childhood neighborhood, determined to dig up the fragments of stories buried beneath years of hurt. The first stop was a small diner, a once-frequented hangout of Javier's, with its warm, inviting glow and nostalgic charm. The faded sign outside hung slightly askew, like a forgotten memory waiting to be brushed off. Inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the inexplicable comfort of home. Clara and George entered, their eyes scanning the room, searching for familiar faces and echoes of laughter. "Do you think we'll find anyone here?" Clara whispered, her voice softened by uncertainty as they slid into a booth in the corner. "Someone has to remember something," George replied, the resolve in his tone steadying his nerves. They waited, their eyes drifting through the dimly lit room until an older waitress approached, her face marred by time, yet bright with warmth. "What can I get you two?" she asked, her voice a comforting melody. "Actually, we're looking for some old friends," George began, a hint of hesitance surfacing. "Do you know if anyone still comes here from around our old neighborhood? We might be looking for some people who knew Javier." The waitress's brow furrowed momentarily before her expression softened with recognition. "Oh, Javier, sweet boy. Such a terrible thing that happened," she said, her voice trembling with weighty empathy. "We used to see a group of kids come in here. They were thick as thieves, but I'm afraid I haven't seen them in years. Do you remember any of their names?" Clara pressed, a thread of hope weaving through her veins. She thought for a moment, eyes drifting to the past. "There was Alex, and then Sarah. I think they lived near the park. They used to come here every Friday after school. You might be able to find them there." The name hung in the air, a flicker of recognition igniting in George's bone-deep memory. "Sarah," he echoed. "She was one of Javier's close friends." Armed with a direction, Clara and George made their way to the nearby park, anticipation swirling as they approached the familiar playground crowded with kids. Tall trees cast long shadows over the dusty path. As they walked, Clara's pulse quickened in the thrill of the chase, but also in dread, as if they were unearthing long-buried sentiments. Among the children, a young woman sat on a bench, seemingly lost in thought. With her dark hair pulled back into a messy bun and a well-worn book resting on her lap, she appeared both serene and distant. "Sarah?" George ventured cautiously as they approached her. The woman looked up, surprise lighting her features. Recognition dawned, and her eyes widened. "George, Clara, it's been so long." Emotions cascaded unexpectedly. "I didn't expect to see you here," Clara said, hesitant yet excited. "Do you remember us?" "Of course I do," Sarah replied, a smile breaking her prior contemplation. "You guys were inseparable from Javier. What How have you both been? Her warmth momentarily soothed the tension coiling inside George. We've been okay. We're searching for answers about Javier, he said, each word tinged with both hope and trepidation. Do you remember anything about that day? As they launched into cautious dialogue, George and Clara detected the flickering shadows behind Sarah's bright smile. I wish I could say I knew more, she confessed after a pause, her voice heavy. But I've been trying to forget. That day changed everything. I was there, but I don't want to revisit that darkness. Then help us find the light, Clara urged softly, her voice filled with sincerity. With a heavy exhale, Sarah nodded slowly, her gaze darkening. All right, but I might not have the answers you're hoping for, she warned. I felt trapped in a web of secrets. The three friends shared stories as they sat on the playground bench, their childhood space now feeling like an echo of laughter lost in time. Sarah unveiled pieces of the past, strange occurrences surrounding the day of Javier's disappearance, hints of veiled messages exchanged between friends, brief moments that felt surreal yet haunting in retrospect. Her retelling of events brought a chill that tiptoed along George's skin. Before everything happened, there was talk about a place we used to call the Devil's Hollow, Sarah disclosed, her eyes glinting with unease. It was an old mine at the edge of town. I heard some of the boys talking about sneaking out there that night. Why was he going there? George pressed, a mix of grief and determination wrestling in his spirit. I don't know, she said, shaking her head. It was just rumors. Nonsense. But Javier was different. He liked adventure. He wouldn't back down from a dare. As their conversation deepened, shadows nestled in corners gave way to shared truths. They painted vivid portraits of a brother Clara and George missed fiercely, revealing the essence of a young man whose absence echoed through every note of music they played. The sun began to dip low in the sky as they departed the park, the weight of the day hanging heavy on their spirits. The shadows of Javier's life felt closer than ever, but so too did the air of unfinished business. Grounded in a renewed bond, they understood they were inching toward fierce territory, headlong into the search for the Devil's Hollow. Do you think it's a good idea? Clara asked hesitantly as they prepared to leave the park. What if it's too dangerous? What if we find something we aren't ready for? Maybe it is dangerous, George said, his resolve centering within him. But maybe it's time we face it, face the truth of what happened to Javier. If we can uncover that mystery, it can help us make sense of our own hearts too. It's part of healing. Clara hesitated, but ultimately nodded slowly. Okay, then together we will face it. Hand in hand, they felt the surge of commitment pulling them under the darkening sky that evening. Nothing would come easy, but through grit and determination, they vowed to untangle the web of mysteries surrounding Javier's disappearance, the truth waiting quietly at the edge of the darkness, urging them ever onward. Here, on the cusp of their journey toward the Devil's Hollow, the siblings embraced the courage to delve deeper, drawing strength from the unbreakable bond of family and love, a journey leading them toward redemption, healing, and the light that lay ahead. The sun dipped below the horizon as George and Clara drove to the notorious Devil's Hollow. Excitement mixed with fear coursed through them like electricity. The muted sounds of gravel crunched under the wheels, bringing memories of childhood and lost days to the forefront. Upon arriving at the entrance, George's grip on the wheel tightened. This place feels so different now, he said, glancing at the dense woods framing the path. Do you think we'll find answers here? Clara asked, her voice a whisper laced with doubt. We won't know until we try, George replied, determination warming his voice. Stepping out of the truck, they were swallowed by the stillness of night. Shadows loomed and the air hung heavy with an unspoken tension. Flashlights darted through the dark as Clara pressed on, each step echoing the urgency thumping in her heart. As they ventured deeper into the hollow, the atmosphere shifted. The trees' towering sentinels closed in around them. A faint sound of water trickled nearby, complementing their muted conversation. What if we discover something we're not ready for? Clara's voice trembled with an edge of worry. George squeezed her hand reassuringly. Whatever we find, we face it together. Drawing strength from their bond, they approached a rocky outcrop where George's flashlight illuminated something partially concealed. Look, he knelt and uncovered a faded sign buried under leaves that read, "Welcome to the Devil's Hollow." This place really has a reputation, Clara murmured, a shiver passing through her. But why was Javier here? I think he came seeking something. Maybe he thought he could reveal secrets in the darkness, George hypothesized. With each step further into the hollow, uncertainty began to give way to clarity. They pressed on until they reached a dimly lit cave, a yawning mouth beckoning them inside. Cloaked in shadows, George hesitated at the entrance. "Are we really ready for this?" "Together," Clara repeated, fear melding with determination. Inside, the air turned stale and damp, wrapping around them like a shroud. Shadows danced around the cavern walls, but then George's flashlight caught something, a backpack wedged between the rocks. Carefully, they pulled it free. The backpack was worn but preserved, filled with items that sent Clara's heart racing. As they opened it, they discovered a tattered notebook, a water bottle, and a small jewelry box. Clara's breath hitched at the sight of the box, recognizing it instantly. "It's his," she exclaimed, eyes shimmering with emotion. George, filled with mingled pride and sorrow, encouraged her. "Open it." Inside was the bracelet Javier had promised her for her birthday, testament to a bond unbroken by time. But the notebook revealed more. Inside he'd captured his innermost thoughts, sketches, diagrams, and fragmented notes. One entry struck them with heavy significance. "The hollow calls to me. Secrets hidden here might change everything." The words lingered in the chilling air. "He was looking for something," Clara said, awe and dread flooding her voice. "But what?" As they shared their findings, an uncomfortable noise echoed through the cavern, a rustling that felt too close for comfort. Clara stiffened, suspicion and fear intertwining. "What was that?" "I don't know, but maybe it's connected to Javier." Intrigued and anxious, George pressed ahead, the synergy of their journey urging them deeper into the hollow. Determination buoyed by shared grief propelled them forward. With each step the mystery deepened, but so did their commitment to unravel it. This exploration was more than seeking answers about Javier. It was an invitation to confront the darkness together, reclaiming strength in their bond and honoring the memory they held dear. With resolve swelling in their chests, Clara and George felt closer than ever to discovering truths that had remained hidden. It was a journey paved with the promise of redemption, healing, and finally bringing their beloved brother home in the only way they could.